To start the record, we're going to talk about the projects. And I'm going to go share my screen and we're going to go over to take a look at the annual report project and what we want to talk about. So this is on the syllabus. It's also in Blackboard. And the key that I'm going to be asking of you is to be answering two questions. And actually, I'm actually going to clear this and use a portion of screen. And let's do a reshare portion because it's easier for sharing and pushing out. Okay. So the two questions I'm going to want you to answer is the last item. Would I consider working for or would I consider investing? I'm a big fan of Steve Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. That's my favorite habit of the 7. So what is your end? What are we getting to? What are we trying to figure out? Well, you're going to be analyzing a company, and actually you're going to be comparing it to some other companies as well. But you want to answer the question, would I work for? Yes or no? No, it depends about it. And invest. Would I invest? Yes or no? It depends about it. Now, you could have 2 no's. You could have 2 yeses. You can have a yes and a no, or you can have a no and a yes. 4 options. Now, you might say, I know Kellogg's. I really love what they're doing. I love the business they're in, the industry they're in, but I ain't moving to Battle Creek, Michigan. So you might like to invest in them, but you don't want to work for them. And that's fine. Or it might be the flip side. They have great benefits. They take great care of the people, but you know what? I actually I could work for them, but they're flying too high right now. Their stock price is probably going to go down, not up, even though everybody thinks they're a sharp and great company. So I probably wouldn't invest, but I wouldn't mind working for them. So that's my question to you, is to answer those 2 questions. And you need a slide or a conclusion or something in the end that says, yes or no, I'd work, yes or no, I'd invest. And everything in your presentation should lead up to that. So that's the nature of our projects. So if we go back and take a look, you will be preparing and presenting. There's going to be an oral and a written component. A live presentation will be done here online for hybrid and live classes. A recording of your presentation for the online classes. Okay. You get 2 grades, one for the presentation and one for the report. Let me be clear, the presentation is going to be presented sometime during the last 2 weeks of class, which, by the way, is 2 weeks away. But the actual written report is not due to till midnight of our last day of classes. So the last class that we're together, some of you will be presenting. And I want to give everybody equal share, equal shot, so that if you're presenting and we kind of point out some ratios that have questions, that you have time to do some analysis. So you'll have time to midnight to correct it. Hopefully you'll have presented before the last day of class and you'll even have some more time. Spoiler alert, extra credit or less or more lenient grading if you present early. If you're one of the first 3-4 people presenting on the first day that we can present, I'm not going to be grading as tough on the oral presentation. It will also give you more time to get some questions answered or things you might want that are going into your project paper to also get answered, to get analysis. So earlier is better. Having more time is to your advantage. But as I said, there are 2 grades, an oral grade and a written grade, and they will be averaged together to get your final project grade. We encourage creative presentations, but at a minimum, you need to present without reading. You're not going to read a script. You're going to present. Now, you can read somewhat off your slides, but you're going to want to extrapolate beyond your slides or beyond your presentation. So I don't want you reading slides either. PowerPoint or Prezi are kind of cool tools to use, but you might find something else that you like to present with. Or I've had students create games, play Jeopardy. Usually, if it's a live class, often people will bring in samples. They'll be talking Hershey's and they're passing out chocolate. So you get the idea. I had someone do Cheesecake Factory and they brought cheesecake, homemade, not Cheesecake Factory cheesecake, but they share with the class. So if you have ideas and insights, I'd do another restaurant and their project was a menu, like a poster menu. They opened it up and they talked about the financial analysis. they talked about the horizontal and vertical analysis. And that was their presentation, not electronic, but from a physical type of thing that you would see when you're presenting to a board that's not on, just on screen, not online. The paper alone is 5 to 10 pages of analysis and summary, not including appendices. So if you have tables, articles you refer to, charts and graphs, those are in the appendices. I do not want you attaching a 10K. I do not want you attaching a balance sheet from the 10K and an income statement from the 10K unless you went and did some vertical analysis and said, well, here's my balance sheet with the vertical analysis. Here's my income statement with vertical analysis or with trend analysis. For the presentations, I don't want you spitting everything out of your paper. I don't want you taking all the ratios you've calculated. I don't want you throwing a balance sheet and an income statement on the screen. It's going to be too hard to read. Your presentation should be a highlights reel. I'll repeat that. The presentation is not everything that you did about the company. You're not going to do a mind dump. You're going to do highlights. If someone said, I saw this movie, it was great. And you said, oh, well, what's it about? You're not going to go in and say, well, when the movie started, they were out in Paris and they were drinking at the cafe and then they were talking. And then scene 2, there was a chase. And during the chase, the people got shot at. And in scene 3, you're not going to go scene by scene. You're not going to talk about the whole movie. You're going to do a summary. You're going to say, cool movie, a lot of action, lots of adventure. And it made me think. It was not your typical shoot 'em up. It was a movie that actually had a plot and it was a couple of horror scenes you wouldn't want to miss. But that's a summary. You're going to be doing a 5 to 7 minute summary of your paper and of your findings. You're not doing a blow-by-blow boxing report of how they started here, they went there, they did that, and here we are. You are supporting your conclusion. You're answering the question, would you work for or invest in the company that you analyzed? Your analysis will be used to support your answer to that question. And your presentation should be used with that analysis that supports your answer. Any questions on that? And by the way, yes, you should have a bibliography. Yes, we'll be recording. If you're presenting live, I want you to see your live presentations. As an example, I have a habit of looking at the screen, not at the camera. I need a little post-it note that says, here, look at my camera. I did a presentation last week, and an hour and a quarter, I was looking more at my screen. I was smiling enough, but I did not get that eye contact that is very desirable when you're presenting. So when you're presenting online, you really do want the eye contact. And you want to make sure that you're not reading and you're not even reading the screen, but you're looking at your audience and engaging with your audience as you speak. That's why we record it. You might get some insights on how you present and kind of self-critique as you go. And that's optional. You don't have to be recorded, but I'll ask you at the beginning each time, do you want to be recorded? And I'll make those recordings available and we'll go from there. There is in bold and in uppercase that says, please make sure you proofread prior to submission. On the Blackboard assignment, I actually added Grammarly as part of the requirements. I put it here too. You need to use Grammarly to grammar check your paper, your written report. I can tell if you didn't use Grammarly. There are going to be typos. There's going to be additional mistakes and errors in grammar. And it's going to be pretty obvious that you didn't check it. And you're going to be docked, probably a letter grade for poor grammar, if not checking it. I've had too many people, your, then, the kind of words that some people confuse easily, and the grammar checkers are actually decent at catching those kind of things. Same thing for spelling. Now, underling and underlining are two words that will not get caught in a spell checker. But again, you want to proofread and use Grammarly. You should all be able to use that by now. We've talked about it before. All right, so what's your analysis going to look like? I'm going to ask that you select one publicly traded company, preferably US. Why US? Well, we're going to be using Edgar. Edgar only has US publicly traded companies. So if you said, I want to do Adidas, cool. If you can get the financials for Adidas, which they actually have a great annual report, if you can get the financials for Adidas, go for it. I don't care whether it's in euros, Japanese yen, pesos, or dollars. Ratios are going to be ratios. A 10% net income percentage is a 10% net income percentage. Doesn't matter what currency it physically is in. So you can do an international company. I'm just putting a prefer US because it's going to be easier for you to find in the annual reports, the 10Ks. I'm also going to ask that you look at the 10Qs. You say, wait a minute, I know what a 10K is, and I know we've mentioned 10Qs before. So I've got a 10K, and that's the annual. There are also 3 10Qs annually produced. And a 10Q is a quarterly, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. There's not a fourth 10Q because that's the 10K for the year. But I'm going to ask you to take a look at it. It's not going to be as complete, but it can tell you some trends. How are they doing in this quarter compared to the same quarter last year? Because if you look at a quarter for retail, like October, November, December, chances are that's going to be better than April, May, and June. Christmas season, holiday season, a lot better sales. Typically 40 to 50% of sales are in that single quarter for a retailer, sometimes more. So you want to be able to do analysis and comparative analysis. That's reasonable. And the 10Q compares to a year ago 10Q. It's like home sales. Home sales in December, not a lot of home sales. Okay, probably less than October. But home sales December will tell you a message. Home sales October to December, November to December don't tell you as much, especially if you go to January, February, March, and sales start picking up. It's picking up because of the season. So again, I want you to compare apples and apples and review the 10K and the 10Q. On the 10K, you're going to read it cover to cover. And by now, you will understand a whole bunch more of what you were reading than you would have 3 months ago. And I will confess, some of the footnotes on there, they're beyond me. Okay, I'm not current on all the gap associated with all the industries that I read an annual report for. Oil and gas is not my specialty. And they have specialty things that they discuss, which are interesting. I kind of understand. I couldn't do it independent if I had to. I couldn't do it in audit. But you'll have the same benefit is that you'll understand the terms. You know what receivables and payables are about now. You know about debt and equity and what a debt ratio looks like, percentage of debt and leveraging, liquidity. You'll know about inventory turnover. You'll know about FIFO, LIFO. You'll know about things that are mentioned and that relate to GAAP. You might not have all the lease rules or revenue recognition rules that are fairly new out there, but you'll have a pretty good understanding reading a cover to cover annual report. And I want to get your impressions, and you'll document that. You may or may not present your impressions. It might not hurt. You're going to mention why you selected the industry. Maybe you have family members that work at the company or in the industry, or it's a place that you might want to work someday. And this will help you do your research before you interview with the company, because you're going to learn about some of the financials. And even if you are not interviewing with the company you analyze, you'll be reading the terminology of the industry. When retailers talk about revenue per square foot, or airlines talk about revenue per mile, or revenue per seat, or percentage occupancy, or hotels and hospitals talk about occupancy, you can make sense of some of those terms and analyze and say, okay, this industry uses those kind of terminology. You'll understand them when you see them and analyze them, and maybe even ask some intelligent questions when the time comes in the interview. You're going to comment on how the information was presented. Does it inspire trust, accuracy, reliability, and excitement? Did it make sense? Was it pretty complete? Was it understandable? And then report anything that surprised you as you were reading. There are all kinds of surprises when you read these things. It might be the depth. It might be they didn't go deep enough into something else. So some of the surprises that you read, they said, I looked at the numbers and they're not so good. But the CEO says things are great. That surprised me. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I wonder how that came about. Because you're going to be doing analysis. Your financial analysis is going to indicate how strong a company they are. Note items that you feel might be missing. There's a term out there that's come about, and I'm going to share that with you now. And it's called triple bottom line, or PPP. People, Planet, Profits. There's a trend in financial reporting and in business. It used to be everything is about profit, bottom line. That's our single bottom line. Do we make money or not? If we made much of money, how much can I give back to my stockholders, and how much do I retain to invest in the rest of the business? But now everybody's talking about the people that you work for, the people in your community, the people you serve, your customers, people and the vendors. And then there's a planet. And we're saying, what is our footprint? And what is our effect on the ecosystem, on the environment, on the planet? So the triple bottom line, or people, planet, profit, is some newer concepts that are being talked about, and you'll probably see in your annual reports. And you might find them interesting, and you might not. You might say, hey, I want to know we're making money. That's what I'm about. I'm in a financial accounting course. I want to know the accounting. Or am I a better company as a whole when I'm taking into consideration all that triple bottom line? And there are a lot of folks that will only invest in green companies, or in companies not in certain industries, or not doing business in certain countries. And there's all kinds of boycotts and things to think about. And are they legitimate? Who knows? That's a personal preference, just like a vaccination shot. Okay, so you're going to read through it. You're going to make some sense of it. You're going to see what surprised you. And note if you think there's things missing. Maybe there are things on there that you look and you saw and said, I wish I had this information. I want to know how diverse their board of directors is. I want to know their plans for expansion. I want to know, it sounds like the industry is struggling. What happened during COVID? How are they going to come out of it? I heard they laid off 20% of the workforce. Are they going to rehire? I mean, what's missing? What you're going to be doing reading. You're going to be doing a Google search. You might have been doing the Wall Street Journal or LexisNexis and taking a look. Okay. You're going to do a background on the company, including a synopsis of the industry as a whole. Now, be aware, you got to compare apples and apples because you're going to be looking at multiple companies. Down here, we're looking at 3 other companies in the industry. Be careful if you say, well, I'm going to pick Apple because they're high tech, Microsoft because they're high tech, and Tesla because they're high tech, and Google because they're high tech. I'm afraid those are not in the same industry. Google is basically an ad agency. They sell advertising. They do a whole bunch of other things too, obviously. Amazon, great company. They're a retailer, but they have something called Amazon Web Services. They make a whole bunch of money and high margins. And the new president of Amazon was the head of AWS, Amazon Web Services. Is he going to de-emphasize retail and go after the higher margin? Because their retail sales are reasonably flat, although they jumped up here during COVID. So pick the industry. If you're going to look at, maybe you're going to look at IBM, or you're going to look at Apple, and maybe you're going to look at HP Compaq because they do computers too. Or maybe you're going to look at Tesla, and then you can compare to Ford and GM. So you want to make sure you're in the same industry. So don't take eBay because they're high tech and then go along and say, well, Microsoft is high tech too, because eBay and Microsoft are different businesses. But you might look at Electronic Arts and a gaming company, and you might say, yeah, I'm going to be looking at some other gaming companies, not gaming retailers, but gaming companies that are doing development of games. And I'm going to compare those. So whatever your passion, whatever you want to explore, whatever kind of companies that you have an interest in or might want to work for, that's where you're going to go with it. You're going to use Edgar. Again, 3 companies. Get the latest financials. You're not going to be using the hard copies. Hard copies are nice to have. I wanted you to have them in your hand so you can kind of open them and feel them and read them and see where the sections are and see how things can be found. Note 1, you backtrack, and now you get your financials. Same thing on the 10K. 10K is a little more involved. It has a little more structure because it's required by the SEC to be submitted in a certain format. And so the titles, the categories, the sections are consistent between all the 10Ks. So if you're a financial analyst or investor, you know where to go to section 6 on all your 10Ks. They're going to have the same kind of information. And then you're going to be performing analysis. This is our chapter 13 stuff. You're going to do ratio analysis, trend or horizontal analysis, common size or vertical analysis. You should be fairly comfortable with those by now. And by Monday, I know you'll be even more comfortable. Minimum of the following ratios for 3 years: current ratio, inventory turnover, receivable turn, debt to assets, profit margin, return on assets. And by the way, you might find that I don't have a cost of goods sold. How do I calculate inventory turnover? Well, airlines aren't selling their planes, they're selling seats. So they don't have a cost of goods sold. Hotels are renting their rooms. No cost of goods sold. Financial institutions, banks don't have a cost of goods sold either. They sell money. They buy money too, and securities. They don't have a cost of sales or cost of goods sold. So you won't have an inventory turnover. Congratulations. You may not have receivables. You may be mainly cash business. It might be a restaurant, food service. So if you can't calculate a ratio, don't calculate a ratio. So obviously don't make one up. You're going to have at least a 3-year trend analysis for at least 5 items over a minimum of 3-year period. Profits, sales, gross margin. You should know all the terms by now. When you do this, you're probably going to do an analysis, both horizontal and say, well, which of these changed the most? My SG&A jumped 20%. My sales jumped 5%. My profits dropped 3%. But that 20% jump in SG&A is responsible for why your net income dropped. So that might be one of the ratios or one of the vertical analysis items that you highlight. And you discuss your highlights. As I said in your presentation, I don't want to see all balance sheets, all income statements, a table of all your vertical analysis and all your horizontal analysis. This is a best of. This is a highlights. This is what's going to support your final slide conclusions of what I work for or what I invest in. Now, I'm also asking you to go in and compare with 3 other companies. Number 6 says at least 3 other companies in the industry, as well as get latest financials on yours. Why do you compare to other companies? Well, how is my company doing to others? In my upper level class, I do something similar, but I say pick 3 companies in an industry, go in blind, don't select the best one until you do your analysis. In this class, financial accounting, I say pick one company, focus, but then do some ratio analysis for some other companies and compare. But by the way, when you conclude, would I invest in them? You might say, well, Amazon, I'd love to work for them. Their average salaries in 6 figures. They're hiring 100,000 people in this coming year. And I'd really like what they do and how they do it. And they seem to be growing like mad dogs. Cool. But I wouldn't invest in them because their stock price, I think, is too high already. The whole market, they're the glamour boys of the financial markets and everybody loves them. Or Tesla or Apple. And you think it's peaked. So that's a good reason to say I'd work for them, but I wouldn't invest in them. Or I wouldn't work for them. I have no interest in high tech. Not sure why I picked the company to analyze, but no real interest. Oh, I got a family member who's thinking about buying a Tesla. I want to know if Tesla's going to be around and be able to talk intelligently with them. That's not a bad reason. So I don't want to work for them. And you know what? They made their first profit in 17 years this past year. It was announced about a month ago. 17 years of negative income or net losses, as you know, means the same thing. So they didn't make a profit for 17 years. Why was this stock doing so well even last year or the year before? Well, that's your analysis when it comes to if you end up doing Tesla. Okay. Optional extra credit, do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And if you also extra credit, sometimes throw a BCG matrix on there. You know, I actually would do that now. And if you are familiar with the Boston Consulting Group, I'll put BCG matrix, also extra credit. Oops. Okay. And there are some tools, there are some publications, ratio analysis, financial analysis that are in the book list previously in the syllabus that you might want to review. And finally, answer the 2 questions. If you don't have those answers to your questions in your presentation, you're Dr. Great, because that's why we're doing this. If you were doing a sales presentation for your company and you didn't ask for the order, that's really significant missing. Or you're doing analysis and you didn't come up with a conclusion. You're saying, well, I'm not here to analyze why option A or option B is better. And you present a wonderful presentation. Option A is cool. Here's all the benefits. And here's some but option B is cool too. Here's all the benefits and some other limitations. And you were asked to come up with a recommendation and you don't say, but we really should do option B because. That's not a good presentation. You won't be asked back to make another presentation. Your career will probably you'll probably be seeking other employment if you don't answer the question you were asked to answer. if you're going to be doing analysis. So that's the nature of our projects. That's where we're headed. That's what I'm looking for. Any comments or questions? I see in the chat there was a how long should the report be? And I mentioned that before, and I'll reiterate it again. If you go back up to the top, the actual report itself should be 5 to 10 pages. Plus appendices, another 5 to 10 pages, maybe more. But I don't want your charts and graphs taking up most of your 5 to 10 pages here. If you have a 2-page paper that you're summarizing or that you're presenting and submitting as a written report, that's a little bit light. You might have a 2-page paper and 17 pages of graphs and charts. That's still light. I want 5 to 10 pages of analysis. Integrate your analysis, your commentary. Here's what I found. Here's the company. Here's the information. Here's the analysis. These ratios are cool. These trends are great. These trends are not so great. I'm concerned about. I wish I knew about this, although they didn't state it, but I might extrapolate, and my gut feel tells me I'd love to invest, and actually with what they're doing and their growth, I'd love to work for them too. There you go. There's 5 to 10 pages of analysis and conclusion. And your appendices, again, are not going to be a printout of your annual report or a copy of the screens from your annual report. I mean, if you want to add some pictures to the cover page, I would urge you to have a cover page. That actually adds a little bit of professionalism, and it's a professional report. And you're going to be uploading your project. You're going to be uploading a PowerPoint or whatever other tool you use. So the written report and the visuals will be uploaded prior to your presentation. The written report's the last day of class, but the presentation you'll upload into Blackboard. So I have access to it. You have access to it. Any other questions that come about? Word maximum minimum. I mean, yeah, you can play the trick. Let's do a 10-point font. If you do a 24-point font, we're going to have a conversation. I'm probably going to know no more than 12-point, probably no less than 10. Can you play with the margins? You probably don't want 3-inch margins on each side. I'm not going to go down that path. Give me APA style. APA style has 6 suggestions of margins, formats, title page, cover page, bibliography. APA is going to be clean. I'm not going to really be detail oriented on APA. This is not a research paper, a research report. It is company research though. So I expect a certain level of accomplishment and style. So I'll call it APA style. All right. So I'm not going to go in and say that you really have to go with that. But APA is a good standard, and it's good practice to, if you could go full-blown APA, that's good practice. I'd encourage that. But I'm not going to be a stickler if you don't put the comma in the right place in the bibliography. I said I will be a stickler on grammar and spelling. I expect if you're going to be a final report or a final project and you're a college student, you better give me some pretty good English. And the question, do we need to start working on this now? I would urge you, if you haven't already. You've got 2 weeks when we start presenting. If you're going to wait for this for the weekend before you're presenting, lots of luck. It's actually best to have this stuff sink in. This will help you with your final exam because you're going to be reading the same terminology, making the same kind of calculations, and it'll help you understand the usefulness of what you've been learning this whole semester. This has been a fire hose. You've learned a lot, and you're continuing to learn a lot. And we're not done yet. It ain't over till it's over. So I'm going to ask to make sure that you want to be complete. And this is a capstone project that, based on what you've been doing this semester and even the studies this weekend to get ready for the exam, this is the kind of stuff that will carry you well in accounting, in finance, in economics, in management, in marketing, in business, and help you succeed long term. We're building a foundation of business knowledge, not just accounting, but business knowledge and terminology. As we've said before, accounting is the language of business. On my LinkedIn profile, you'll see some Hebrew, some French, English, and you'll see accounting as a language, because accounting is a language that you are learning, and it's a powerful language that will help you succeed. Other comments or questions?